The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We are coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We're thrilled to be here with you this morning live. Those of you who watch the show regularly know that a week and a half ago we went to a new format where we're on Monday through Friday from 10 in the morning till 11. And I know some of you were watching yesterday on Tuesdays. Typically, we're going to show you a best of, which is going to be a pre-recorded segment. And I know, but I'm sitting there watching as you guys are watching it and able to respond, which is sometimes a little bit more fun. And so, but I know some of you were frustrated because you were like, it says live, but it's not live, Shannon. Well, we are live right now. This is live. So, of course, somebody will be watching this recorded and you'll be like, well, not really. But on this Wednesday morning, we are live as we come to you. We got a lot that we're going to be doing this morning. You know I love Wednesdays. This is typically our Ask Dr. Doreen segment. We don't have Dr. Doreen this morning because, in fact, well, part of the reason why we don't have her today is it's her birthday. You know what? If she were here, she would still be here for her birthday because that's how she rolls. But she is not here, so I don't have her. But I hope you will all join me in wishing her the happiest of birthdays. She's an amazing woman who has done amazing things with her life that I don't know about you. It has had a tremendous impact on the quality of life that I enjoy because I have my kid, and that is the most luscious, wonderful thing in the world. So I definitely owe her a great deal of respect and give it so willingly and lovingly, and there is no end to it, right? But I hope that you guys will take a moment to wish a very happy birthday to an incredible woman, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet. We might visit that again later on the show. I don't know. But what I do have for you this morning, and Trayvon, I'm getting to this, but he's ahead of me. He's always ahead of me because he's so much smarter. That we are going to be interactive with you, so he's showing you some of the different ways that you can interact with us. And I'll come back to that. But this morning, our special guest that we'll have is Evelyn Kung, and she has been a wonderful fill-in when we don't have Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet here, and she answers your questions in real time, and that's going to be really wonderful. But I did want to point out that there's lots of different ways to write your question in. Traven is showing you some of the different ways that you can do that. I do want to remind you that our website is autism-live.com. That's a new website, brand new format, so that the whole point was so that you could get to more information and more inspiration. Please check it out and let us know what you think about it. I'm also wanting to know more about how you feel about this new format. I definitely heard that you were fatigued that we were not live yesterday. But in general, I want to know how you feel about the new format. And because honestly, we live to support you. That's what we're here for. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, your concerns. We want to help you to address whatever is in your corner, whether you are a parent, a teacher, a practitioner, a person who's on the autism spectrum, or someone who has a different classification but loves and cares about somebody on the spectrum. We want to help you to get to the answers that you need. So if it's not working for you, let us know, because we will find a different way to get it to you. That's what we're about. Okay, I think I covered everything. So we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we have Evelyn Kung who's going to be with us. She's going to be answering your questions in real time. You can be writing those into us on Facebook even as I speak. Stick with us. Back with Evelyn Kung.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Welcome back. We are here with Evelyn Kung. I wanted to say as we start, I wanted to say hi to Rosie. Rosie, who's watching us on Facebook Live. We're really thrilled. If you're watching and you want to write in, I sort of love to do the thing. Do you ever watch Romper Room?
Yes.
Okay, so really been thinking about my dad a lot because his birthday would have been 2 days ago. And I'm getting ready to go to Boston. I'm going to be in Boston on Saturday speaking at a parent event. I'm the keynote speaker for, it's a parent conference, just a one-day thing at Endicott College. And I lived in Boston when I was little. When I was 4 years old, we live in Lynn, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston. And my dad moved there to work with a radio station because he was eventually in television. And how he got into television was they moved there for him to work at a radio station, but when he got there, the radio station was out on strike. And he couldn't cross the picket line, so he needed a different job. And one of his Air Force buddies said, I'm getting work down at the local TV station, come with me. And my dad had been an electrical engineer and been in radio, so they had him be the sound guy on Romper Room. Which you know what that means. That meant he was Mr. Music.
Oh.
So they would say, Mr. Music, please, and he would put on the record, right? So my dad was Mr. Music. But on Romper Room, there was a part where she would hold up this little mirror that was blank, right? And she would say, I see Billy and I see Bobby. And every once in a while, she would say, because my sister's name is Sarah and my brother's name is Scott, so she would say, I see Sarah and I see Shannon and I see Scott. And we would be like, yay, she sees us, right? And I think from time to time that we should do more of that on the show.
Great.
So Rosie, I see you. Isn't that wonderful? I'm going to get myself one of those things. Because, you know, people should be able to write in and I would love to say happy birthday to
I would love
kids,
to say
right?
happy birthday to everybody.
So, Dr. Grandpuchet, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
See you. I see you. In any case, so here we have with us Evelyn Kung. And you are an amazing person who has worked in the clinical field and worked for CARD in the clinical field for how long? How many decades?
Oh my goodness. Almost 3 now.
Almost 3 decades.
Yeah, almost 3.
And we love it when you come and visit because you answer questions that we wouldn't trust with anybody else except for Dr. Grandpuchet. And that's high praise that
Thank
we're like,
you.
you know, you are the other person that we trust with these questions. So we appreciate you. We do like to give the disclaimer at the start of every show that we have any expert answering questions that we can't ever expect an expert to be able to answer child-specific questions.
Yes.
We need to be clear about that.
Yes.
That this format doesn't give enough information to give justice to a child-specific question. So when you write things in, be as specific as possible, but our experts give you a, somewhat generic information about what you can consider doing next, but it should never be misconstrued as being child specific.
Definitely. Every individual isn't an individual.
That is absolutely right. So I'm just going to launch into these some of these questions, if it's okay with you. Hi, Shannon. Thanks for your videos. They're really helpful to me. I would like to ask, what are the pros and cons of putting a child with low to moderate autism, vocal but with significant speech delay and no conversational speech, in a Montessori school with neurotypicals? He's almost 4 years old, amazing boy with no bad behaviors or sensory issues. So, Evelyn, what do you think?
Actually, okay, it depends on the type of Montessori.
Ah, okay.
Because there are different versions everywhere. A child with autism typically is not self-directed. Okay, they tend to go back to their routines, the things they like to do, their perseverations. And being in this environment is great because there's all these other typical 4-year-olds if the child actually has some imitation skills.
Okay.
Okay, so it's great. They have some, it sounds like he has some vocal language, but not conversational. But a lot of times Montessoris are great for our kids because there's the flexibility of the schedule, because there's not a schedule.
Yeah.
And you can follow them around. And if there's an aide with this person to help direct them to either imitate their peers or to learn how to play with something in the environment, or learn how to do something functional new, that works really great. If you're just sticking the child in by themselves, there's a part of the Montessori system where it's like, let the child do what they want to do. Mm-hmm. That for a child with autism means they're sitting in a corner ignoring everybody, or just spinning wheels on something and not looking at other people and not interacting. And if the whole day is that way, that's a waste of time.
Okay, so I would call that a not enriched environment, if that's what's happening. But it has the potential to be
a really good environment.
Yes.
Yes, we've had a lot of kids when we're starting to integrate them into school. Montessori environments are great because if they can't follow that specific structure of 40-minute circle time and whatever it is, that's really difficult for our kids to sustain their attention for that long and actually still be learning something. Montessori environments have been really good for a lot of those environments. So to be able to be directed, there's typical peers there where they can imitate them, they can move from item to item, and it's okay. But we also have been in Montessori systems where they don't want us there, because they want the child to be solely child-directed.
Okay.
And then they don't want the person with them kind of directing them towards peers or play or anything else. But those are the kids that are sitting by themselves somewhere.
Okay, so maybe having a meeting with the Montessori school people and asking how much will they allow for a one-on-one aid? Will they allow for direction? Because our kids, a lot of them at that age need prompts.
Yeah, they need prompts. And the thing is, I also, whenever it's 3 and 4, typically most 4-year-olds are talking, but there are a lot of preschools too where there's 3-year-olds who aren't talking.
Yeah.
They're receptively following instructions and playing appropriately. But if you're looking for a language model, sometimes I would say go look and see the kids first.
Yeah.
Because are these the kids that you want your kid modeling to?
There you go.
Once in a while, it's not who you want your kids around.
Okay.
But that's every preschool.
Absolutely. Great advice. Okay, moving on to the next one. I think my son thinks in pictures. How do I use that to help him develop his language? When I ask, what center did you work in today, he can't answer. He is 6, high-functioning ASD. He has a one-on-one aid and mainstream kindergarten class. And so what would you think?
A lot of our kids are visual learners, where they do think in pictures, and there's a whole type of teaching that follows that path. But there's a lot of, he has a one-on-one aid and he's in a mainstream with typical kids. Questions such as, what center did you do today? There could be a number of reasons of why he's not answering you. Usually one of the things is they don't have the language. Maybe they know how to repeat language, or maybe they have some aspect of the language. But unless someone said, pointed, this is the center for Legos. This is the center for this. And actually name it.
Yes.
A lot of times our kids have no idea what they were engaged in, even though the teacher is like, go to your centers, and figure out where you're at. So a lot of times there is a language issue where how do they put together this novel sentence of where I was and what I did. Sometimes the kids don't understand the aspect of time.
Yes.
So being able to recall events is a whole skill in itself, because you have to realize where you are now and where you were and be able to use the language for that to talk about a past event. Yeah. But for kids, for visual learners, we have a lot of them come in, and they're amazing. And this is a great skill for a child to have. Yeah. And typically, if they really are thinking in pictures, there's a lot of the kids who think in words too. Because, one of the things that with autism is, they like routine, and words don't change. You always spell apple, A-P-P-L-E.
Right.
So a lot of the visual learners, there's order, and it never changes.
Right.
And that word always stays the same, and it fulfills something within them that they really love about it. And it's a great skill. So many of our kids that are hyperlexic, which is basically the ability to sight read without ever having been taught to read, a lot of those kids are actual visual learners. And whenever they are those readers or those pictures, you can start using pictures and icons and words to start pairing them with vocal language, so they start learning that they're the same and this is just another form, and they are able to see things in the same way. If you have a child who is able to talk and everything, a lot of times they don't have perspective taking. Yeah. And so the kids with visual images, they start thinking, like if they hear somebody talk, they're seeing all the pictures in their head, and it's teaching them how to order the pictures. Yeah. And how to put it together in a concrete way. Because there's so many things that our kids are really typically good at very concrete information, but once information starts getting more abstract, what picture is there for it? Because the picture might be 10,000 pictures for that one emotion or that one attribute, whatever it may be. Yeah. So it does take some teaching in terms of understanding what things are. When we're working on perspective taking, one of the things we'll do is like think of a bird, we'll play a game like think of an animal, and then they have an animal, what animal are you thinking of? And they'll say elephant, and then I'll say something like it flies, did your picture change? Yeah. And it's like, oh, it flies, so it's not an elephant anymore, now it's a bird. Right. And like just giving attributes to show them that what somebody says to you changes the picture in your head. Yeah. And that goes the other way around too. So when you're talking to somebody, you need to give all the right information, or they could have to get the picture in the person's head. Yeah. So there's a lot of good things that you can do. Our kids that actually look at words, we actually start writing the words out to pair with like all of this information, and that becomes the concrete form. Yeah. For many of our kids, they'll start to see the words instead. Yeah. And be able to start, and that really helps at school, because the kindergarten, first grade, it's all memorized information. So it's easy for them to understand like letters and numbers and how to put a sentence together, and it's still very concrete. It's just later on when information starts to become more abstract that what a visual image can put with it. Yeah. And a lot of times it's the word that actually becomes the visual image, I think, for so many of our kids. Like when I've asked them, different kids that when they get the ability to be able to start telling you how they think. Yeah. A lot of them do think in, pictures, and, and then when they can't have a picture, the word actually becomes the picture. Interesting. Yeah. So
the brain is such an interesting thing, and autism and the way autism creates thoughts and patterns of thoughts is so interesting to me. I'm sure it is to a lot of people. And of course, Temple Grandin has written a lot about this and speaks a lot about this because she's a visual learner. And I think it's been so eye-opening for people to, I'm a visual person, so it never occurred to me until I heard Temple Grandin speak that everyone doesn't see in pictures. No perspective taking on my part, because I just assumed that that's what everybody else did. And when I realized, oh my goodness, I see things in pictures and my child doesn't. He's a concept kid. And then I realized, oh, that's why it's like this sometimes. Because I'm telling him a picture and he needs to see the whole picture, not the snapshot. So I love that this parent is saying, what can I do because this is the way he thinks? Because you're already ahead of the game. You're already seeing how his brain works and saying, how do I tailor the learning to that? So specifically, to make sure that that when he comes home and she asks him a question about what did you do today, you were saying be more specific and have them label the center so that and talk about what center he's in.
Yes.
What other things can they do to help him to be able to have that? That's so important to parents. We get this question, I'd say, about as much as we get, how do I get my kid to sleep?
Okay.
Which is like
Wow.
the question that people ask all the time. And we're going to talk about sleep on Friday. Don't miss Friday's show. But anyway, how can, with a visual learner, how can we get that conversation to happen at home?
I think it's making sure the language is there first, like
Okay.
what you were saying. Like, just so many parents want to hear what happened at school, but nobody's actually walked them through.
Right.
To tell the kid, it's such for the big schedule, like now it's recess or now it's math.
Yeah.
But somebody say, being able to have your aide ask the kid there while he's in the center,
Right.
what did you do today? What did we just do?
Yeah.
And to be able to say what he did in that center. And to be able to say, what did you do? And to bring that question there, what did you do in this center today? And for him to answer. And
Love it.
actually, in real time, be able to answer what he's been doing in each center. And then have mom ask it the exact same way.
Right.
That's not a visual way of preparing. Or what you could also do is you could have pictures of all the centers too.
Yes.
And have those at home so that can prompt him to remember what he did in each of these places.
I also think, too, one of the problems is for a parent is, if you ask them and they don't have it, you don't even have anything at your disposal to prompt. What I've heard of people doing, and I know we did this for a while, was that we would have the one-on-one aide send home a little blurb about something that happened, maybe in math, and then I could say, hey, how was math today? And he would say, nothing, and then I could say, did you do really good on your quiz? What did you get? And then if he says, I don't remember, I could,
You
say,
had some information.
yeah,
to
was it
feed
in the
him.
90s? Did you get a thing in the, oh, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But that we could form some form of and then I would reinforce him for it, and then we got more.
So what's happening now?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Definitely the communication book is a needed quality because then that transfers information home and the parents know how to prompt questions,
Yes.
responses from kids. But what happens now, we're in the digital age, is people actually will take pictures of what the kid was doing and then send it home.
Sweet.
Yeah, and then the older kids that have phones will take pictures of their homework assignments or some cool project at school, and then we have them text it to mom or dad. And so there's a communication. So then when they get home, they can ask
Yes.
about like, hey, so how was I saw that picture. So there's like a
Yes.
jumping off point.
Tell me about what happened.
Yeah, I saw
And
there was
that would
something.
be a great visual thing too, because then he's looking at the picture of what happened and knows exactly what she's talking about.
And that's the visual prompt.
I like it.
And it actually prevents the nagging part, that part
Yeah.
for the high schoolers, because the high schoolers are like, if they do it with all their homework,
Yeah,
the parent doesn't have to nag them.
that's cool.
But there's a lot of visual elements now because of technology that is really easy for the communication back and forth between the environment and the home. And all those pictures will prompt him to be like, oh, this is what you're asking. And then you just start to learn, working with, in an ABA way, working to fade the picture. So at the beginning, you might have to show him the pictures of all the centers, but at some point, you can just point to the book that has all the center pictures in it and just be like, just point and just let him think like that and ask him the question and see if he's able to reference, oh yeah, what's in that book.
And make sure you reinforce them when they do even attempt to communicate with you about what it is that you care about. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's the
definitely.
important part.
Because for them, a lot of these kids, they don't understand what's important or not.
Right.
So for them, if you're asking about one thing versus another, they have no idea why this is more important than something else.
Okay.
So
I'm saying hi to Shannon, who's watching and saying hi, and I'm saying hi to Cassidy, and I'm saying hi to Keith. And I tried to email you yesterday and it bounced back, so I got to resend it back. Susie, I'm saying hi to Susie, all these wonderful people that are watching. And Michelle, hi Michelle. And probably more of you that haven't written in, but that's okay. We're going to take a short break and then we're going to come back with more of your questions, so keep watching. Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself sometimes, why does my child have meltdowns? Well, the difference between tantrums and meltdowns, they're a part of typical development, but meltdowns are when things get a little bit more out of control, when even the child isn't sure what's entirely wrong. Generally with a meltdown, there's an environmental component. There's something else going on outside the child that's making the tantrum worse. It's really important that we start to be detectives and take notes and look around at the environment and start to figure out what are the things that happen every time your child has a meltdown. And lastly, it's important to get help. You really can't face these kinds of things effectively completely on your own. Tantrums, they're a part of typical development, but don't accept meltdowns as something that just happens. Make sure you get help and support. You might be asking yourself if your child has autism. I love that little picture of Jem. His kindergarten teacher has this tradition that she's retired now, but she has this tradition that in the spring, right before Mother's Day, she has this suit jacket that's an oversized suit jacket. And for girls, there's like, it's like a shawl or something, and a hat, and she gives them all a rose, and she takes a picture, and she gets inexpensive IKEA frames. That is one of my most treasured possessions in the world. We all think that, doing the big expensive thing is the thing, but honestly, and I look at that and think of her fondly all the time. So we have a bunch of questions that came in on Facebook. Cassidy wants to know, how do you help an individual, a child, or an adult on the autism spectrum that are high functioning with executive functioning deficits and poor time management and life skills? It's funny because at one of the other ones, I said, oh, I think that's me. But I look at that and I go, yeah, sometimes I have poor time management skills too. Because I think we all can run that way.
Yeah, we all can easily do that.
It's why so many executives have business coaches, because they're not good at that. These are people running companies. There's your question is still valid, Cassidy. How do you help somebody with that? To be able to do the executive functioning deficits and poor time management and life skills. Of course, I think about the fact that we just earlier showed the commercial for Skills Living,
yes.
Which has a lot of those lessons. But having said that, what would you like to say?
I say it's for EF deficits, it's all compensation. Okay? It's learning to recognize what the issue is, learning for that person to have a goal to want to fix that, because if they don't want to fix time management and they don't see a problem with it, they're not going to work on it.
Okay.
But a lot of times it's compensation. Compensatory.
So what you're saying is not having this expectation that someday you're just going to be great at that thing that you're not good at,
yes.
But that you find a way around it.
You find a way to work through it to get to where you want to be.
Okay. So if you can't remember to bring your homework, you find a place to put it so the night before, so that you don't have to think of it that morning.
Yeah. So it's all the people who lay out their clothes the night before to get dressed. It's all the people who, I was saying that about using your phones.
Yes.
All my teens all hated writing in their agenda, but most of them are happily taking pictures of all the homework in all their classes.
So then they have it.
Yeah, they have it, and they don't have to look somewhere, and they love their phones, and they will go to it.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of people who refuse the paper-written agendas, and they will happily put it into their calendar on the phone. I'm one of those people. I just remember the first time doing this job when I triple booked myself, a personal appointment, my kid's appointment, and a work appointment.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I need everything in one place.
Yeah.
I need it all on one agenda, one calendar, because when it's everywhere else, then I'm only looking and I'm only focused on these other areas. So it's a lot about teaching compensation. That's like, what method do you learn the best? What method is easiest for the individual?
Yeah.
And then putting it in that form. And the thing is, what we forget is so many of our kids on the spectrum, we have a goal for them, but maybe they don't. And they have to have the buy-in. You have to have the buy-in for them to understand, why do I need to use a calendar or an appointment or a reminder or a timer? If they have to really want to do whatever it is. or have at least get to a place where, you know, they want to be able to function in that environment.
Yeah.
And once you get the goal, it's usually just a planning. It's an EF planning of how to get there, and just like working through and then practice.
Yeah.
Showing them that you have to practice the skill before you get good at it and using it, and where it's very functioning. It makes you a very functional individual in whatever environment they want to be. And earlier I had said something about not knowing what's important. So many of our kids don't understand what's important.
Yeah.
You know, the saliency is just an EF skill in its own self. And you might think one thing's important, and they might think something else is. And it's, you know, that's when you're clashing with parents, you know.
And sometimes, you know, we were talking about technology and how great technology is, and there are apps that you can search to see which app helps to do whatever. I get a little overwhelmed when looking up the apps, because then you pick one and it's not the one, then you have to delete it off your phone, and by the time that time I'm like, I'm over it, I'm done with it. But I will tell you, Cassidy, one of the things that I've started doing is going around to people that I see that are good at things and going, how is it that you do that? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you find that they go, oh, I have this app and it's the only thing that gets me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it. So looking for somebody that you admire that is able to demonstrate those qualities, and saying, how do you organize your calendar? How do you organize your email? I'm always fascinated now. I met somebody the other day who apparently is the queen of Outlook. And I said, emails get past me. It's like one of my biggest problems right now, that I meet people and I say to them, email me. And if I don't get back to you within 24 to 48 hours, assume that I missed the email and send another one. And I feel like
that's what I do.
I feel horrible saying that to people, because it's like a big sign saying, I don't have the EF for that figured out, the executive functions for it. But I met this young woman and she was like, I got you. I will show you how to do that so you will never miss another email. And I know people have a way of organizing their Outlook. So, you know, because I don't know, Cassidy, if you're asking for yourself or for somebody else, but if it's for you, it might help to go to another college student and say, what do you use? Or go to one of your college professors and say, what have you seen students use, to let you know what other people are using. And then you can try it. If it doesn't work, you know, move on.
Yeah, but everybody needs some help. Everybody needs some help. And executive function skills are the last part of your brain to develop. So that's not a thing to worry about. It's just as long as you're developing.
There you go.
So just, you know, you can keep learning, figure out new ways how to do things, figure out what works for you. And, you know, everybody has something different. You know,
absolutely.
Like there's things that I love about my Outlook, and there's things I hate about my Outlook.
Right? Me too. So we have another question. I love this. What advice do you have for a teen visually strong who has auditory processing challenges and may miss parts of conversation? This is the one that I said, oh, I think that's me. Because I can hear a lot of things, but there are some things, let's face it, my receptive language is not as strong as my expressive language. I need to learn to listen better. But for a teen, strong visual auditory processing.
Yeah, this is really rough, because there's the auditory processing, and what I realized, there is a component, and I haven't seen any studies, but I know from the years when I used to do assessments, there is just a memory processing delay. So I've had kids, the first kid it happened was we were practicing, like we saw one of his classmates in Starbucks, and he said hi to her, he knew who she was, and he was like 6.
Right.
And we walked out the door and we're like, who was there? And he couldn't tell us. And the therapists were like on him going, we're not going to tell you. Because it became like a game.
Right,
no, we're not telling, we know you know who was there. And he just couldn't. And like 20 minutes later at home, they were like, so who was there? And he answered, like with no issue. And we're like, what is this? So I actually brought him in, and it was when I was doing a lot of neuropsych testing. So it's like, I have to figure this out.
Right.
And there is like this one nonverbal test where there's immediate memory and delayed memory. And we realized that when he saw information, it took him 17 minutes to process. So it was one of these where you show him something, you take it away, and you say what was there, and he couldn't answer.
Right.
But if we waited 17 minutes, he could answer you.
That's fascinating.
It was so fascinating, and this is a nonverbal test, so it was all just through pictures. And he was actually a visual learner.
Right.
So we actually worked on decreasing, like trying to practice getting it slower and slower, like so that he could recall it faster. So it wasn't just all auditory processing, there was also like this memory component. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So in classrooms, we tell usually if you have the auditory processing delay, but you're a visual learner, that means you can read. And so usually we just tell the teachers, you have to put everything in writing.
Okay.
You know, so they can read the instructions and follow along. In conversations, it's teaching them to socially, it's almost like little warnings to whoever the other speaker is. Just being like, it takes me a moment to think, like just being able to meet someone new and saying, it takes me a moment to think and to hear what you said, so, you know, like, don't mind me, or I might ask you to say something again. Like, it's teaching those little qualities. It's what they call repairing language. Yeah. So that you can stay in a conversation when you miss components. Yeah. You know, and you said that maybe that's you. Yeah. But you have, I see you, you're great with talking to people. And when you don't hear, you're saying, say that again. Like, I'm sorry, I missed it. And it's teaching the teen how to do that appropriately. Yeah. And then everybody's usually really good with you. Like if you kind of warn people, like, hey, I have a little bit of problems, like listening for long periods of time. I need, you know, and you're just kind of warning them. And so that, you know, I might ask you to repeat, it's not you, it really is, like how I'm thinking, or this is what I'm working on. Yeah. People are very nice to you. Like people will wait for you.
Well, I do see that for me, sometimes somebody will say something and I'm processing something else. And I'll take the information in, but it doesn't get to the part of my brain, and then it's like I have to switch over and access. It's tape delay. I always say, sorry, I'm on tape delay. Give me a second to process because I got this other thing going on. And I find that because it isn't my strongest suit, for instance, when I go to IEP meetings, I will ask for all the reports in advance because if they're just going to read something to me, I can't process it all. I needed the visual. And I'll say to them, give me reports ahead of time. And if somebody messes up, I say to them, sorry, you have to give me the piece of paper and I need to be reading along with you because I'm not going to get it orally with the AU, not OR, right? I'm not going to be able to process it in that way. And I've stopped apologizing. For years, I've apologized for that. And now I just don't apologize. I go, no, that's how I'm going to have it.
Yeah, and so in situations, that's a compensation that you do. Yeah. It's like if you want me to be responding immediately, you give me the information ahead of time so that I can respond. But conversations are different, you know? Yeah. Conversations you have, you know, I always say as the kids get older after high school, our adults that have a delay are usually better suited because adults are patient. When you're little and the little kids try to do this, other little kids aren't patient, so then they just walk away.
And that's hard.
And that is really, really
it's a
hard.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah, and that's just because for a typically developing child, when they're young, they have no patience to sit there and do this, you know, or to wait, or, you know, they have their own skills that they're working on in terms of learning how to stay in a conversation or relationship. Right. So that's really rough for our little kids. But usually, like when we can get them to high school, there are other peers who will be patient enough, being like, okay, you know, I'll wait, or like, hey, or let me repeat this for you, and it's not a big deal.
I've been racking my brain while we've been talking. I just watched an interview with a young actor the other day, and I can't think who it was, but they were describing working with a director, and they said, I don't know what it is with me as an actor, but the director will tell me something, and I will tell them, I'm not going to be able to process. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not going to be able to give it to you until tomorrow. But I'm going to come tomorrow, and I'll have had time to process it, and I'll be able to do it tomorrow, and that they could. And the director was fine with that. They had to adjust their style a little bit, but it was the actor who was telling somebody, this is what I'm going to need to be able to deliver. I'm going to be able to do it for you, but I need this much time. And he said, I don't understand people who can just, you know, do it right there. I need process time. But so part of this then is teaching those processing, the self-advocacy skills to this teen. But is there also a way at that point that we can extend the muscle a little bit, get it a little bit better? Can we work on the memory a little bit, or is it not worth the time to do that?
Well, the thing is, they probably should be working on it on a separate place.
Yes,
not
in real time.
Not in real time. In many ways, they are working on it in real time if they're in just the typical relationship or conversation. But they can be separately, like learning how to, you know, Auditory processing is really difficult to measure, and so it's very conflicted. Like, if you start reading, information on it, people say yes, you can teach it, no, you can't. There's a lot of philosophies around it.
Yeah.
But people do get better if they're like visual learners, being able to. If I'm going to go hear a lecture, it's better if I had the paper ahead of time, or I've done some reading on it ahead of time. If you're, in a situation for work, getting it's the preparation that you more need before you get there. It's the priming of the information for you to be able to have a conversation and be able to follow along, and contextual cues and, all of those things.
Yeah.
But you can practice, and I've seen our auditory processing kids just improve as we work on it with them in therapy. But it is something that's tough, and there are some people that they just have this delay.
Okay.
And then you have to learn to compensate at some point.
I will say that we've had people a couple of times on the show talking about AIT or Baralt, or Tomatis is another one, which are all therapies designed to help with auditory processing. And it fascinates me, and they always tell me I'd be a good candidate. It's expensive, and a lot of times your insurance won't cover it. Almost all the time insurance won't cover it, but
Have you heard it recently? Because everybody was doing these when probably my first 10 years. But then some people actually had some reactions to it that were not good.
Really? I have not heard that.
But then in the recent last 5 years, I've started seeing it not in those versions, but a different way now through occupational therapists.
Interesting.
But yeah, we had some kids who have not done well with it.
Really?
Yeah. We've had kids who have done well. We've had the majority, I have to say there's no change.
Interesting.
But we've had both.
Okay.
Like both ends too. So
Very
you just don't know who it's going to help and who's not.
And it's expensive.
And
so
it's
it's hard
expensive.
to, we're talking about like $5,000 to go through the process. So Shannon says, Shannon, how about that? Hi, Shannon. Ideas for helping treat OCD when it comes to asking repeatedly the question where everyone in the family is, including pets. An example, we took our cat to the vet some time ago, and now he asks gray cat at veterinarian, even though he's totally aware that the cat is at home. This happens 10 to 20 times a day for multiple people and animals. And I can see where that would get very frustrating for you guys. And I'm throwing this at you, and there was a lot of details. Anything you want me to repeat? I don't have the age of the child. Shannon, if you have a second and can tell us how old this child is, but repeated questions asking where everyone in the family is, including pets.
So for a lot of these kids, it's multiple reasons they're doing this, and we can only guess until you get to know them better and they're able to. Language is a big issue. Some of our kids are just really social. They're just really social, and they know how to ask these questions. So they just keep asking the same questions because they can't think of another way, something else to ask.
Yeah.
So a lot of times teaching them to ask different questions, teaching them to find information and be able to talk about it really helps replace the repetitive interaction.
Yes.
Sometimes our kids are lacking in language, not just in questions, but they don't know how to say, well, Mom, I was thinking about that time when you took the cat to the vet. What did they do with him? But not having the ability to say any of that. So they know how to say gray cat at veterinarian, and that kind of is a little glimpse into their thoughts, but we don't really know what they're thinking of. Other kids will sit there, years later and be like, I was just thinking of a cat. I love that cat so much, and I'm so sad, or I'm so happy that he's back and he was okay, because, I was really worried back then.
Yeah.
And people know how to talk about all these things about a situation that was in the past, but a lot of our kids lack language.
Yeah.
And they just don't even know how to do any of that, so they just keep repeating the same question over. And if they really like social interaction, they know if they ask a question, you'll probably answer them.
Right, it's attention.
And sometimes there are kids who like the pattern. They know what the answer is going to be, so they ask because they know what's going to come.
Yeah.
So there's multiple functions of the question asking. We don't know what it is, but there's a whole realm. It could be the routine of it. It can be, this is a way I get social interaction. I know, you'll interact with me if I ask this question. It could be they have all these other thoughts, but they don't know how to say it.
Okay.
So it's just back to the one question that they know how to say.
So definitely be looking at what you think they're seeking out and try to give it to them in a different way then. So if they're seeking attention and they keep asking the question to get attention, maybe calling them over, giving them attention directed at something else.
Yeah, and or just a lot of times for those kids that where it's attention, it's like where you give attention, just any positive interaction they have, you're just going to give them a lot of attention.
Okay.
So whatever it may be, if they're sitting and playing with their Legos, you're going to be like, wow, look at that structure you built. That was really cool. And it's different from last time.
Right.
You know, like it's amazing because it's different.
Right.
Emphasizing that it's not the same structure that you built last time, which is a lot of our kids will do the same things over and over. But giving them attention for things that you think that are more appropriate or different, varied.
Yeah.
So they're able to, you know, when you're giving that attention and that positive interaction, that it's not, they can learn that, oh, it's all these things.
Yeah.
You know, that can get a lot of attention from people and not just this one thing.
I will say that there was a period of time where Jem was driving me crazy because he would ask me the same question over and over and over again. And I began to realize that it was because he was anxious. And the answer I gave often wasn't the right answer, and it was making him anxious. And so we started doing a thing, and it was always in the car. So I looked at what the patterns were, right? And he, you know, for instance, he might say, you know, when are we going to have dinner? And I would say, you know, we're going to get home in a half an hour and we're going to have dinner. Well, at first I realized he doesn't know what a half an hour is. So I would have to put it into terms for him. We're going to be home in one SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah.
Right? And he'd be like, oh, okay, that's not that long. But if I said a half an hour, he would just ask the question again, when are we going to have dinner? Because the input of the question didn't get there, and he was having anxiety about it. But so then I learned that if I answered the question and I said, we're going to, in one SpongeBob SquarePants, we're going to have dinner. And then if he asked the question again, that then I would say to him, I would just repeat the question back to him and say, when are we going to have dinner? And he would say, in one SpongeBob SquarePants. And I would say, okay. And sometimes that would quiet the anxiety enough. But then other times we would go through that phase and then we would have to go to the next one. Then I would ask him a question about dinner. What are we having for dinner? Right? And then when he got older, I could say to him, what are you worried about? And then he would answer the question with something like, I'm worried that I want to have this or I want to have that and that's not what we're having. And then we would be able to figure out, so the question would stop, but it's like digging and figuring out what's really going on
What's the purpose, yeah.
And then I have a friend whose child asks repeated questions for totally different thing. And I have found that with him, if I then bring up something that he really likes, it interrupts the pattern and then we talk about that. Okay. And that we don't, after he asks the first time, you know, and the question is answered, if he asks again, then if I ask him about something that he's really hyper-focused on, the questions go away. But I also think that's anxiety. I think he's anxious and he's like, I don't know what's happening right now and nobody's talking to me.
Yeah, and just think about your life if you didn't understand what was coming, ever. We all would be really, really anxious. And I always talk about like the component of language, you know, like giving representation. If you have a concrete learner, try to give a concrete representation.
Right.
So even our kids that, you know, usually if you said, oh, at 7 o'clock we're going to have.
Yeah. And
so yesterday I was on a call and they were like, but he doesn't know what 7 o'clock means and he's really anxious. I was like, it's simple. You teach him, you write the 7 and you get a digital clock and you say, when it looks like this.
That's when it happens.
That's when, and there's a whole group of kids who are non-vocal, very challenged, no academics anywhere, all functional learning, but I can teach them what time to take their medication just by matching. When the clock looks like this, go grab this. Go when the clock looks like this, go get this. And it's all just that visual learner of like, okay, when it looks like this, this is what it is. And they don't know what 1 o'clock means. But they know that when it's a 1 with a colon 00 on the digital clock, this is time.
Giving them that structure. I want to say that Sonia's watching and Lupe says hi. Hi back to you, Lupe. Syed wants to know, what is the best way to deal with a child who is 6 years old, who is moving to America, but he knows nothing about English? He started speaking 2 years ago his native language, Arabic, but as parents, we are concerned about being unable to learn the new language. Please advise.
We have a lot of families move here from all over the world, and for a lot of our kids, they are not grouping it. This is Arabic, this is English.
Yeah.
You know, they don't group it that way. Typical kids don't group it that way. A lot of our kids will figure it out, they'll figure out like this word when I'm at home is okay to say, but when I'm outside and I say this word, I get no response.
Right.
So then I'm using this other word.
Right.
And they start to pair with the environment, with people, what words to use. So he might not even, get that understanding of this is Arabic, this is English, and it's okay. He's just thinking this is another word. And with this word, I can use it with these people, and with this word, I can use it with these other people. But a lot of times with our families that speak multiple languages, we do tell them, like, what is going to be the final language that's going to be used? Like, think about the long term. If you're only in the U.S. for a year, you might consider just staying in Arabic the whole time as much as you can. And if you're planning to go back. But if you're moving here and you're immigrating here and you're going to be here and this is where you want your kids to be going to school, then it is the time to, when you start therapy, when you're teaching them to start using English. Because that access to language is what's going to give them access to interacting with people, and English will be the language that more people will understand here.
Yeah.
So a lot of families worry about like losing language, but we talk about more like, and it varies. So many kids, we have the younger kids that really start young. We say do English now because learning to speak or communicate is a language in itself.
Yeah.
So we just choose one, you interact, and then a lot of our kids go on and they become multiple language speakers
Yes.
later on, because it's just like, once I know it in one language, then I can do it in multiple languages.
Exactly.
And it's not a problem. But then we do have the kids who come in and get really confused and stop talking.
Yes.
And if that's what's going to happen, then we advise the family, everybody just go to one language.
Okay.
And because consistency is what works for all these kids.
Yeah.
And being consistent and speaking the one language and the phrases and just, as you start to learn, then that is maybe what you want to be doing.
Okay.
So but there's amazing, we have kids here who know that, we have a little 4-year-old on the East Coast, and he can do Hebrew at home perfectly, but when he's out and like at the center and everywhere else, he knows to use English.
Isn't that amazing that they can get that distinction?
Yeah, and he's on the spectrum and started out non-vocal and the whole deal, but he knows exactly who he can talk to.
And the amazing thing is now, I look at the kids and the things that they are learning from television programs, from educational DVDs that they don't know are educational DVDs, and from video games. Like, they're learning other languages through osmosis, playing a game, and they don't know that they're learning. I would encourage you, don't you think that Camp Discovery would be great for this kid?
Camp Discovery would really be
So there is an app online that's a free app that is used here at CARD. It was designed to go in conjunction with a skills account for a young English language learner. It's a fun game. It's going to be free. You download it and they'll learn all these English language things. I think that's fabulous. But the other thing that I've always recommended to people, and it's old school, y'all, it's old school, but Leapfrog has a DVD that's called The Letter Factory.
Oh, yeah.
And I swear by that to teach any kid the alphabet, because they use science, and what they do is they give a visual representation of the letter. They give it personal features to it, so that it, like the letter K walks and talks and has his little buddy, the little K, with him, and they always are doing a motion. So they kick, right? And so there's a thing, and the kids kick in the video, and then there's a song that goes with it. They use every mnemonic device for the kids to be able to learn the alphabet and the sounds of the alphabet. It's amazing, and you can probably get it on eBay. They should re-put it out because it's an amazing thing. But that's just my advice. Can I say that people are writing in and saying thank you, that the mom who asked about visual and auditory is saying thank you. What you said is spot on about what my son has experienced. The memory part explains why my son may recall events that happened a year ago, and I can't think on my feet either, so we're all that way. I want to say hi to Helen Angela, who's with us. And Shannon wrote back and said, great insight. I didn't think of some of those. And Shannon, thanks very much for your thoughts. Very thought-provoking. So just wanted to go through that. We still have a bunch more questions that we did not get to on here, but I think we're close to being out of time. We've got a few minutes. Let me see if I can ask one more question. My son is 7, turning 8 this year, and he is ASHD they have there, but I think they meant ADHD, maybe. And autism, and he is verbal. Since last year, one of his stimming behaviors is to gyrate his penis between his legs so that people really can't tell if he is masturbating. He does this when he's worried or excited in the classroom, at home, etc. At home, we redirect him to his bedroom, but the urge is so strong, I have to pick him up, and he continues to do it, and it occurs while watching his favorite TV show. Even though the TV off, turning the TV off doesn't stop from him stimming in this way, unsure where we should go from here. And I'm glad we got a chance to answer this one because, you know, this is a common thing that people write in and there's concern, and especially when it's happening out in the world because other people's reactions to it, people will put things on top of that that aren't there. It can lead to, you know, other concerns. So take it away, Evelyn.
You know, this is such a rough one because just the topic itself, you know, just this is an issue that so many of our kids experience along the way at various ages. I always go back and I look at what is self-stimulatory behavior. Self-stimulatory behavior is somehow innately feels good, repetitive, and there's not a real function for it except that they like it.
Right.
And this is where I'm really searching. When a kid starts to, when there's engaging in stereotypy, that means they're not learning anything.
Ah, okay.
And that's a problem.
Okay.
So I always say, okay, if there is some kind of stereotypy going on, that means his brain's turned off.
Okay. So we need to make an enriched environment in which he's engaged.
He needs to start being engaged, learning new things, learning how to do other things.
Yeah.
Because if this is the only thing that he does that makes him feel good, well, he's going to keep doing it.
That's right.
So you have to get them to start learning, really like enrich the environment, get him like
maybe get something physical going on.
Yeah, he needs to learn how to do other activities.
Yeah.
You know, and if it's a physical activity he needs, there's a ton of activities that kids can learn how to do that engages other body parts and does create endorphins when you exercise.
Exactly.
And so I always say, like, if I see a lot of stereotypy, I need functional behavior to go up.
Okay.
Because as long as the child's engaged in that stereotypy, he's not learning anything.
All right.
So
that's fabulous advice, and you got to it very quickly, which is wonderful. So we're about out of time here, and I want to talk a little bit about, because they're all discombobulated for me in what order. But tomorrow, I can't even believe that we haven't talked about this yet. Tomorrow, first up on the show, you know who we have on the show tomorrow? William Hung from American Idol. So I know it's like, what? But he is a big supporter of the autism community. You remember him from American Idol? He was the one who did the She Bang audition for American Idol and then became an international superstar for it, for singing a song badly on television. Yes. And so he's on the show tomorrow with a comedian, Keith Raza, who is on the autism spectrum. And Julie Dipp is here because they're doing a benefit in which Keith and William are performing. So that's happening tomorrow, first thing on the show. And then we have on a team of people who are talking about VR for autism. So that's a really exciting show tomorrow. And then on Friday, we've got the amazing Carrie Bowers, who's got a new film. She's the filmmaker who did Normal People Scare Me and Normal People Scare Me Too. And now she has a new film that she's going to be talking with us where she talks about love and sexuality on the spectrum. And I know, you know, everybody's ears perk up and then people go, oh, I don't know about that. But in Carrie's capable artistic hands, it will be fabulous, I'm sure. And we've got more research happening on Friday. And then we've got a wonderful guest talking to us about flying and practicing flying on the autism spectrum. So all that is coming up this week. And for those of you in the Boston area, I am in Boston speaking. I'm told that it's sold out, but I hope that isn't true. Well, actually, I hope it is true, but I hope that you all already got your tickets, right? But anyway, we're out of time. We thank you so much for being here, and we really want to say a very happy birthday to Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet and send love and send blessings upon her head and thank for all the work and all the heart and grace that she brings to her work so much. So we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.